everybody. Welcome to the Music Gallery at Home, the April 27th edition. It's been really a fantastic experience so far. A lot of great feedback, really interesting stories, and music being played as well in response to our commission score. The Canadian Music Centre has been totally on point, moderating things and being a fantastic partner. Crystal has been running things at the video controls from her place. And it's just a big adventure, which just keeps getting better and better every week. But before we start the show today, I'd like to acknowledge the land on which the Music Gallery operates, both physically and virtually. It's been a site of human activity for over 15,000 years. This land is the territory of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe Nation, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Territory is the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Ojibwe and Allied Nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island and around the world. As part of the community and as individuals, it's up to us to recognize our privilege in this space and to educate ourselves further along the way. I'd also like to thank our funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, Toronto Arts Council, SOCAN Foundation, Department of Canadian Heritage, Ontario Creates, and all of the members who have supported us through the years. This particular conversation has great historical relevance to the Music Gallery. We're going to be talking about somebody who encompasses almost the entire sector of Indian music studies at York University. Over the years, Professor Sankaran has bridged Eastern and Western pedagogical styles and has influenced generations of students who have become noted performers, composers, and music educators themselves. He's made valuable contributions to many scholarly conferences across North America and has published numerous articles and textbooks. As a composer, he has to his credit numerous pieces in the genres of gamelan, jazz, Western classical, and world music ensembles, and continues to perform and write compositions for contemporary and world music ensemble. Tonight, we have the special pleasure of his daughter, musician, composer, and educator, Suba Sankaran, who's known from her work in auto rickshaw, in free play, and very many more projects. And we last saw her at the Music Gallery as part of our Moondog celebration a couple of years ago. And she'll be asking her dad about life, times, art, and there's going to be a little bit of performance too. So I would like to welcome him here, and I would like to hand it over at this point to Suba. Please take it away, and I can't wait to hear this story.
All right. Thanks so much, David. It's a real pleasure to be here and to be part of this series and a platform what I consider to be kind of informal interview and conversation to discuss Canadian musicians and their music. And of course, it is my great pleasure and honor of interviewing my father, Trichy Sankaran. And it's particularly special for me because he's not just my father, but also my guru of South Indian music. And we have the great pleasure of sharing the stage together. We have on many occasions, and we hope to for many more occasions. And so being musical colleagues and, of course, dear friends as well is really quite an amazing thing. So welcome to my father, Trichy Sankaran. And so I'm just going to jump right in with some of our questions here. So this is kind of a larger scale question, but can you tell us a little bit about who you are inspired by?
Okay, thank you, Suba, and I also want to thank David for having me in this series. You are asking who I was inspired by, in my musical career, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I have been inspired by some of my predecessors in my own field, that is Carnatic drumming field. My guru, the legendary maestro Payani Sri Subramanya Pillai, then Palgat Maneyar, and his disciple Palgat Raghu, to name a few. And in the world music context here in Canada, I have been inspired by the Nexus, Steve Reich in particular. You know, like Steve Reich wrote many pieces. That includes pieces for wood, clapping music, music for 18 musicians, and so forth. And I have been highly, inspired by these people, uh, and where they highlighted the interlocking patterns and the resultant complex rhythmic counterpoints. And then I have been inspired by the African ensembles, African drummer, particularly Abraham Adzenia, with whom I have been featured uh, by when I performed with them with the World Drums, organized by John Wire, and amazing, like this African, particularly the Gankogi bell pattern and other stuff. I really enjoyed, so inspired, and I had collaborated with them on many, many occasions. And other drummers I have been inspired by just some of the jazz drummers, which would include, I would say, Joe Morello, Max Roach, Ed Tickpen, and Steve Gadd. And I have some stories to tell about, my connections with these people. Um, and of course, I have been greatly impressed by the Gamelan Evergreen Club Gamelan ensemble. I was a part of the ensemble for many years. I have written so many pieces for gamelan, and so I should say, like these were some of the people who I really whose music I really enjoyed thoroughly.
Great. And that kind of ties into the next question, which is a lot more about your particular creative process. Now, again, this is a grand question, but I want to specifically talk a little bit about your accompaniment style in South Indian Carnatic music. Much of the accompaniment that happens in Carnatic music is improvised within larger structures. So maybe you could explain for us what your creative process is when you're accompanying. Is it something that's specific? Does it vary from song to song? Maybe you can give us a little bit of insight into how you approach accompaniment.
Well, that's a great question. The art of accompaniment is quite interesting. People haven't really talked much about it. Um, when you say the creative process, I would say a successful accompaniment is based on these three things at the least, which I named as the IAS.
Okay.
Sounds like a degree. In the Indian service, they used to call it like an IAS degree, means the highest administrative service position. They were holding IAS degree, then which has been subsequently changed to ICS. So this IAS is, I would say, I stands for involvement, imagination, and then A for anticipation, attitude, aesthetics, and S for superior selection of patterns. At least the least, I would say. As you know, the Carnatic music has several compositional types, beginning with the etude-like composition called the Varnam. And then we have so many kritis handed down to us by the Trinity composers of the 18th century, namely Tyagaraja, Dikshitar, and Shyama Shastri. And then there are other composers that is the predecessors of Tyagaraja, and also the contemporary composers. So our compositional repertoire is enormous, and the bulk of concert consists of really a number of kritis. Kriti is the type, like a type of composition, which is in a rondo structure, which has a minimum 3 sections: Pallavi, Anupallavi, Charanam. So a good drummer should know, first of all, he should be aware, he should at least understand the repertoire. He should know the song form very well, whether he's able to sing or not. So it has been suggested that the vocal training is essential for a drummer. And I had gone, to vocal training. I have taken up the vocal, for 2-3 years of studies with a great singer in India. And then, most of my experience comes from the stage, how I learned to accompany these songs. So it has to be accompanied in a very creative way. And like each section should be highlighted, in an imaginative way. And there are sections where like there are some composed solfege for which the drum accompaniment will be like almost like a note for note. That kind of synchronization should be there. And so, in other words, there are certain moments where the drummer can be very active, and then there are certain passages where he can be passive. And it also depends upon the type of compositions. Some kritis are, say, for some like kritis like Telisi Rama is like a more of a syllabic nature. And then other compositions, other kritis, which are in the Rakti ragas called the Ananda Bhairavi or Riti Gaula and other ragas, they are more spaced, and so one can use like a sparse way of playing and then really enhance the melody, the beauty of the melody. That's important. So for all this, in the creative process, that includes really a strong hold on rhythm and also at the same time knowledge of music and how supportive you can be, to the main singer or the main artist, so to say. And it is not a place to really show the drummers the technical prowess.
Right.
It's really a matter of enhancing the beauty of the song. The drummer should remember he's not just playing for the thala, rhythm cycle, but he's playing for the music. And maybe now or later talk about like the sound and silence is also part of the creative process.
Yes.
Because there are moments where the drummer should know where he's not supposed to play.
Right.
And even in creating compositions, you all know the importance of silence, pausing or silence within the compositional structure. It's really amazing in this connection. I really think about John Cage and particularly of his piece, 4 minutes and 33 seconds.
Of course.
I had the privilege and honor of performing when Jim Tenney organized this at York University. And amazing. And which has, that kind of idea has far more reaching, implications. I would say it has more philosophical and spiritual implications to that. So, like I can keep, I can go on and on and on to explain this. In my experience of performing with artists for over 60 years, I can say like how I really enjoyed. And in this connection, I want to talk about one incident where a great singer who was known for his bass voice, and he used to keep low pitch as his tonic. And also his rhythms were also very slow. Low and slow are not really good for a drummer.
Right.
Because the rhythm has to be really tightened to get good sound. So if you were to tune your drum, say B below C, you know how it would sound.
Right.
But I took special effort in preparing special drum, to accompany this gentleman. M.D. Ramanathan was his name. And amazing. And when I accompanied him, the composition was so full of bhava, so full of emotion. And there was one particular kriti in the Raga Riti Gaula which had many stanzas in Charanam. And I tried to accompany in a creative way for each of these Charanams. And at one point, I just gave a moment of silence. And I accompanied the music through my silence. And I think that should tell everything.
Lovely. Yeah, well, you're touching upon so many aspects of not just accompaniment, but of course improvisation as well. When we think about sound and silence, when we think about structure and improvisation and the fluidity that we have within that, and also the fact that you're creating some sort of arc, creating, as you said, different types of activity, different types of rhythmic activity 4 different types of melodic activity. And that's really quite beautiful, just sort of creating this arc of a story between beginning, middle, and ending, and having some dynamic contrast in there as well.
Absolutely.
You mentioned already a few of your collaborations, and I want to kind of dig into that a little bit. As David mentioned at the top of this interview, in addition to your usual traditional settings of performing in a South Indian classical Carnatic context, and your numerous solo performances, you've performed with groups like Nexus and Evergreen Gamelan Ensemble, various jazz artists, electronic musicians, African music ensembles, and of course the very well-known and well-loved World Drums, and your own group, Trichy's Trio, of which I'm a part as well. What highlights do you have from these experiences, or is there a standout experience or anecdote that you'd like to share?
Maybe a couple. I can think about that. Since we were listing the type of collaborations I have had, maybe I will start with electronic music. That was my first experimental kind of music at York University with David Rosenboom.
Yes.
And one day at their studios, we were discussing, and he had the what, if I remember right, it was the Moog synthesizer. And then there was Richard Teitelbaum, who was talking about Tai Chi dance, and I believe that was his friend who was a dancer, a meditative kind of dance called the Tai Chi, and so in the process we touched upon how this deep meditation really the brain produces more alpha waves. So the dancer's brain was connected through electrodes and connected to the synthesizer. At my suggestion, they tuned the random patterns that were coming out in the pentatonic scale called Mohana Raga. So my task was to really find out the undercurrent rhythm, even though these patterns were really random. There was no, specified thala or rhythms were not going at a steady pace. So I was digging into it, and then found a common ground of patterns that can go with the melodic random patterns that were coming out from the synthesizer. So this was amazing, the kind of work that we experimented on. And actually, at my suggestion, this was named as Alpha Tai Chi Thala.
Oh, nice.
Involving all 3 cultures.
Lovely.
That was my first kind of experiment. And then, of course, I have performed with an African drumming ensemble as a part of World Drums. See, all these collaborations gave me new perspectives to think about time and rhythm. When I was jamming with Ibrahim Adzenia, we both were asked to have a dialogue. Abraham and myself throwing patterns at each other and trying to answer back, and this kind of thing, call and response.
Yes.
Which was going on. And I was looking, having been trained in the Carnatic tradition, the beginning beat of a thala cycle, the rhythm cycle, is very important to us, particularly the downbeat, the beginning beat of a thala cycle. So I was looking for very some. And I think my intuition told, okay, forget some, just to go with the flow. And that one.
Yes.
I still remember that, that moment, how it happened and how I was able to really collaborate. So this tells sometimes how we have to just to evaluate and re-evaluate our own situations, our own concepts, even though they are traditional. And I started re-examining, and in what context, and particularly when it comes to collaboration or fusion, you have to really understand the nature of the music in which you are involved, and that's, I think, that kind of learning experience for me.
Yes. Yeah.
And then likewise, what inspired me, say for example the group Nexus, particularly the Steve Reich's the piece, the pieces for wood, and the clapping rhythms, and that inspired me to write a composition in using the age-old or the traditional thala, 21 beat thala, and I named it as Catch 21.
Yes.
And actually, that was a direct inspiration, from Steve Reich's work, and how you can use, the different rhythmic counterpoints and through clapping rhythms. And I used that in a different way, and for which I also wrote the melody, and you have sung that.
Yes.
And you have been part of that, Catch 21.
Yes. Lovely.
And then Gamelan provided another perspective about time. Particularly, I was interested when I was involved with the gamelan, the harketing, and then the interlocking patterns that inspired. And not only that, as you know, in Carnatic music, once the piece starts in a particular tempo, in a particular rhythm cycle, it stays throughout that piece. But in gamelan music, it's not like that. It begins in certain way, of course, even with the marking time with the gongs.
Yes.
And then there could be some accelerando, and then there's retardando, retarding, and then finally, they mark the end of the piece with a big gong happening, probably on the last bar. Okay. So these things were kind of quite amazing, quite new to me when I first started learning about these. And somehow I started, really to enjoy, and particularly the interlocking patterns inspired me so much. And, so I started writing, pieces for gamelan. I started with Swaralaya, my very first piece, ever written in notation. And I had gone through their notation that was called the cipher notation. Again, there are differences between the two traditions, Javanese and the Balinese.
Yes.
And it was quite amazing. So, then finally we all decided that we are all familiar with the Western notation, so we ended up doing it in Western notation.
Right.
And I remember for that piece, Swaralaya, I used a set of mridangams. It is quite unusual. Set of mridangams tuned to the gamelan scale. And I started playing melody on my drums. Who said the drums have to be only highlighting the rhythms?
Of course.
Also play the melody. So that was the new idea that I came up with. And subsequently, I remember at York University also, I gave a solo concert using a set of drums, calling it rhythmic alapana. So just like improvisation on the raga, it's an improvisation on the rhythm combined with some melody. So I found some new venues to express myself, new venues for expression.
Yes.
And understanding time and melody and harmony, in all, different ways, through my own collaboration or from listening.
Yes. And you've also, speaking of harmony and melody and rhythm all rolled in together, you've also composed for Western Classical Orchestra.
Yes,
and chamber orchestra. Do you have anything to share about that experience for you?
Yeah, the first ever commissioned piece came from Winnipeg. It was Ensemble Mandetta, who they asked me to perform with them and to come up with a new composition for them. And that's when, I wrote this Carnatic concerto, scored for violin, viola, some Western drumming, clarinet, and saxophone, and on those instruments. It was an amazing experience for me, to really trying to orchestrate this piece, and at the same time, maintaining the features of Indian music. And there I also included a good mridangam and a kendong, solo, like exchange between the two drums. And so that was a wonderful experience. That has been afterwards been played on many occasions, the Karnataka concerto. Um, that's when I really learned to really how to express all my musical ideas and how to put them all into notation. So it was a revealing experience for me. And
Yes.
I enjoyed it thoroughly.
That's great. And something for the viewers and the listeners to note is in case you don't know as much about South Indian music, normally it is not notated, though attempts have been made in the last several decades. But it's an art form that is taught by rote from the guru directly to the disciple. And so
In the oral tradition.
from the oral tradition, exactly. And so it's really quite an amazing accomplishment to bridge that gap between East and West, to merge these musical cultures, and to find a way to disseminate that knowledge with, as you said, with the agreed upon notation.
Yes.
When you find something, it goes back to your thoughts on accompaniment and improvisation and collaboration, about being able to adapt.
Yes, exactly.
And I think adapting is the key there.
Correct. Disseminating about this knowledge, probably the unique thing about my teaching at York University was to really bridge the cultures, because I created a course on rhythm, and where I had drawn all these ideas, from different traditions, and I have made that class into a composition class, encouraging people to really write composition, incorporating all these elements. Of course, I gave them a strong foundation on Indian rhythm, like learning to clap the thala cycles, and also learn to speak the rhythms in solkattu, the drum syllables. And it had such a tremendous effect. I think soon they gave up the idea of counting in numbers, or like one yanda, two yanda, when they started using taka dimi, taka jona instead. So it was really amazing thing, and some students have produced wonderful compositions in this regard, I should say.
That's beautiful. And of course, so many of your students have been a part of the music gallery, but they've also become composers themselves, teachers. I've met teachers who still say, you have to thank your dad for me, because I still use takadimi takajono when I'm teaching young children. So it's really permeated. It's gone very, very far, which is a beautiful thing.
So gratifying to us.
Yes, exactly. So speaking of your life as a musician and as a teacher, most people know you as either a performer and or a professor, having been at York University for 44 years before retiring, but also maintaining that performance career throughout this time. And that included your annual trips back to Chennai to perform for the concert season. But I'm going to focus on your life here in Toronto. When you look back on those years that you've spent here in Toronto, what do you think when you look back on that?
Well, I feel that I have come a long way, and I learned to really understand the mainstream culture. And at the same time, I also realized that I didn't have to give up some of the cultural things that I carried with me and which I have passed on to my family here. In other words, not so much compromising to do, yet how you can really embrace the mainstream culture.
Mm.
And I'm glad, and well, at home, not only me, I think everybody at our home had an open mind
Yes.
and open ears for
Mm-hmm.
kinds of music. And from the beginning, I don't know how I got that, but somehow I learned to like it. I learned to like it, and I got involved. This kind of involvement is so important. And rather than just to staying at the periphery, it's better to just to go dive deep into it.
Yes.
You know, that's the amazing part I learned, I would say. And through my collaborations, as I said, I developed the different perspectives about the time and about my own culture. I think even to understand my own culture,
Hmm.
because there are people in India saying, "Oh, in India we have produced wonderful rhythms. There is, no other systems like this." But I say, okay, don't think that you own Sankirna, which is the 9-beat cycle. You listen to Turkish music, and they
Right.
have 9 or 11. You name the number. They have beautiful rhythms there. Wonderful. And I remember even at York how I encouraged students to delve deep into the studies of Brubeck's music, particularly the Anga Ala Turk. That was one of my favorite pieces, in addition to, of course, the Take Five.
Hmm.
And amazing stuff, amazing stuff. That reminds me just to add, if I can take a minute,
Sure.
um, this incident I think people should hear. Dave Brubeck made a visit to India, I believe it was 1959, with Joe Morello. And they were at the All India Radio studios in Madras. And at that time, my master, Palani Subramania Pillai, received a phone call from the All India Radio saying that some great musicians from America have arrived here. They would want to listen to you. Please bring your drum, and you, in turn, you should also listen to them. So it was an impromptu, just a session, for them to collaborate. And amazingly, my master, who had never heard anything about jazz, and he started playing along with the Joe Morello. And he was, playing Kandanadai, he was playing Tishranadai, and Joe Morello tried to follow as much as he could. And amazing. And the radio broadcast that program. I think it might be even available on YouTube.
Hmm.
And they titled the program When the Mridangam Played Jazz.
Nice.
Later on, in one of the percussion conference held in USA, I don't know exactly which place, I don't remember now. But I went particularly to see Joe Morello, the great drummer. Amazing. Like who can, demonstrate multiple rhythms. That's what I saw during this session. So I went and introduced myself, and I asked him about that incident which he remembers. And then said, "Do I ever remember you? Your master made me sit at the practicing pad and prepare for performance." He was still remembering that event. Amazing, amazing story.
Wow. Yeah, and there's an early example of fusion.
Exactly, that's probably the first kind of its, first of its kind, I would say, when we talk about the fusion.
Wow, that's amazing.
People remember that event.
Yeah, and now here we are. So if we fast forward to the present day,
Yeah.
where do you see that kind of activity going? So there's been fusion from, say, that point, at least in South India, from that point to today. Do you have thoughts about where your life is going as a musician here in Toronto, as a retired professor, or the state of the arts here in Toronto and where it might be going?
Yeah, I would say, now I have more time on hand. I am into writing more compositions and also more introspection, about time. And I'm really enjoying to really experience, looking back at my own experiences in concerts or otherwise, how time can be looked at from many angles. And in my teaching also, I'm able to express that, when preparing students, when I'm training my students.
Mm.
And it's amazing. And as you know, like I have always been with rhythm. Rhythm has been my life and continues to be. And I always come up with some new chord wise, new compositions, which sometimes I record it, or sometimes I just at least jot it down in a notebook so that I won't forget. And I have so many chord wise which I haven't played in concerts.
Wow. And for all the viewers out there, I've seen the books. There are many of them, and each page has a new gem of a composition, a beautifully elaborate rhythmic cadence that is a part of the repertoire
Yeah.
in South India.
See, when I came to this country, to Canada in 71, I left India at the pinnacle of my career, concert career.
Hmm.
But I have never been out of the music scene. I always make it a point to go in December to play in during the concert season and to maintain my professional integrity and my playing, and the people are looking forward to that. And I think I feel that it's a responsibility.
Hmm.
Music is a responsibility, and I, of course it's there, and also it should be for my own enjoyment as well,
Yes, absolutely.
not just purely entertainment, because I am looking at it from my own personal point of view, like how these things can be enjoyed, what we call the rasikatva. You have to be a good rasika to be able to appreciate. And
Yes,
I think that that's what is taking over me now. And I'm able to really see beauty in each and everything that I do, that I play. And
that's
I think
beautiful.
I always relate this. People used to ask me like how you are able to maintain this. It's purely discipline, devotion, and dedication. The
Hmm.
three P's.
Yes. Yeah, and that basically sums you up right there. Um, yeah, it's amazing. I have to say, just to to turn it to me for a moment, I'm so grateful having grown up in that, uh, with that under my roof, to have you as my guru and to really see that kind of discipline and dedication and devotion. It's like none other that I've experienced in my life. And so I have to hope that some of that may be rubbed off on me as well.
Thank you. Both
Um,
mom and I are very proud of you and what you have been
aw,
doing. And
oh,
really,
that's very sweet.
you are doing it in a different way. If I had educated so many people, so many
Hmm.
who have become music educators themselves. And
Yes,
I remember, recently that we performed with the TAFL music, and where you brought the choir, the
yes.
students, singing the Kamala Jatala with your arrangement, and I was so, it was what, what should I say, uh, so emotional for me,
Yes.
to see, you know, uh,
Oh,
we are so proud of what you have been doing too.
oh, that's very kind. That's very, very sweet. And I really appreciate that. Um, for those who don't know, in early March, before things started locking down, my father and I were both part of the Indigo project with Tafel Music. And I do know that there are some clips available online, but it's a beautiful concept, a beautiful story, the merging of history and geography and music and dance and an elaborate script. And so we had the joy of being able to collaborate, to be on stage together yet again. Now, speaking of the stage, I'm gonna move some of my questions around here. Speaking of the stage, I want to focus on the music gallery for a moment.
Yeah.
I know that when I was growing up, going to the music gallery to see my father perform, we would always come home with this kind of rush, this beautiful, kind of natural high feeling. And I know that it's one of your favorite performance venues, and it has been over the years. Um, can you talk a little bit about your interactions at the music gallery, maybe who you performed with, how it inspired you, and that energy in that
Oh,
space?
definitely, definitely. The music gallery has been, so kind and so wonderful venue, for for many of my performances, be it traditional music or contemporary music. And I remember featuring many of the traditional Karnataka concerts there at the music gallery, bringing artists like T. Vishwanathan from Wesleyan University, Karakudi Subramanian on the Veena, and also a few others, Lalgudi G.J.R. Krishnan on the violin. And so I had given many traditional concerts.
Mm.
And you see, music gallery is really great for community events. They have brought the community together, and anything that you want to do, and you just one phone call away, you just to say that if the date is available, if the gallery is available, you'll be interested in featuring me. I have some great music to show, and they were ready. you know so I have done a lot of experimental music, and I have performed there with the gamelan group when they were celebrating the 25th year.
Mm.
Amazing, amazing place. Music gallery has done so much, and many of my concerts I remember, like, will of course draw the Western crowd. Um, and on one occasion when I was playing with Vishwanathan, I heard a call. I received a phone call from the Consulate General of India saying that he wanted to come to the concert. I said, "Oh, by all means, you should come." And so, to his amazement, he saw many people there. I think most of them, some of them were my students. Many of them were also Casey Sokol's students and friends and musicians. And of course, Andrew Timar and so many, all known faces. They're all there, keeping time, keeping tala, listening to enjoy music like anything. And the Consulate General was so amazed, and because probably he saw like very few Indians, and then it started drawing more people. So as the more and more events were happening,
Mm.
I think the gallery has started receiving more Indians too, to their venue, and so I cannot overemphasize, the contribution of music gallery. Almost I had known music gallery from its start,
Hmm.
probably in the early 70s. And I know for sure that Casey Sokol was part of that,
Right.
in starting the gallery. And amazing work they have done over the years. And, and it has a very high place in my heart. And,
Mm.
I cannot thank them enough, for all the encouragement given to all musicians of all kinds, of all genres.
Lovely. Um, Now, what advice would you give for people who are pursuing music, especially in a day and age now where art is business and business is art? It's kind of a big blurry line. Of course, in our actual circumstance now, very difficult for live music and live music venues. What advice would you give to artists who want to pursue this line of work?
Yeah, if somebody wants to pursue this as their musical career, I think, they have to first of all spend more time with the music, practicing,
Mm.
and see, there is so much distraction these days. Even on YouTube, there are so many kinds of music. Proper guided listening, and they need direction. Some of the younger musicians need direction as to really choose the right ones, the good ones, and before they start diversifying. And I think at a very young, early stage, they start diversifying. I would say, like, be strong with your own tradition, be it jazz, classical, rock, or pop, whatever, you know, whichever pleases you, whichever that you have been working on. Be good at it. Be strong, and I think this way you can have the roots somewhere, and then you can start diversifying.
Right.
If I'm able to diversify, it's because of my strength in my own tradition, I would say. At the same time, having an open mind. And this is something, I would like to advise. And there is no harm in keeping music, just for entertainment, for just, like a casual listeners. And for those who really want to be strong, or, like become serious musicians, I think that these are like the discipline and this kind of a dedication, and devotion to their music is very important. And finding
Beautiful.
the right direction and finding also the right type of teacher is also very important.
Yes, that's true. That is true. Um, I know that we're coming dangerously close to the end of the interview, and uh, as we speak about this spirit of experimentation and improvisation, you have graciously agreed to give us a spontaneous creative offering here and now, in the safety of your living room. And before we get there, I'm not sure if there are any questions that have come from the viewers slash listeners of this particular interview. I'm kind of on standby here in case there are any questions. Before we get to that, is there anything else that you would like to share with us about these experiences that you've had as a South Indian musician who came from a very rich tradition, and then you uprooted and came to Canada many, many years ago, and you've maintained your musical career, your performing career, your teaching career, and you still teach now, just not in the university setting. You conduct workshops, you compose. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Is there anything else that you wish to share with us just before we move on to this little performance at the end?
I think you have covered quite a bit there. And just maybe I will emphasize the importance of learning rhythm through the medium of solkattu.
Perfect. Maybe you can tell us what solkattu is as well.
Solkattu is the phonetic vocabulary imitating the rhythms of the instruments, and it has become a great art. And it's also an excellent medium of instruction, to teach rhythm, and which I opened up at York University as a course, special course. Everybody should learn solkattu first before they can play it on a drum or something. And also I have produced a textbook on that. It's called The Art of Monochrome. And any composition that you play and any rhythmic ideas you may have, you can even converse in solkattu with another person. That's the amazing beauty of it. You can take wherever you go, because specializing any instrument takes time, takes years of practice, whereas solkattu anybody can learn. Okay. So this has become a wonderful medium. Now this is more like a scat singing in jazz, and we can also compare that with other kinds, like where they learn to rap or something.
Yeah, or like beatboxing is a good example.
Beatboxing is a very good example. Yes, thank you. And so, like, I have written compositions, created composition using solkattu, like a Veni Express in one of my compositions.
Yes.
And just for the viewers, I would like to recite a korvai, one of the compositions. It's a cadential form called korvai, and play it on the kanjira, so that they can see the relation. Ta kita tum, ta tum kita tum, ta ta ka jumuta din hi na tum, ta ding hin 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 na tum. This is a korvai, which takes 16 beats. It's an aditala, 2 cycles. So I will play it on the kanjira. This is a South Indian frame drum, which I have taught to many students at York. So the korvai is played on kanjira like this. I'll just play a few more patterns and perhaps end with another korvai or something. Okay.
Beautiful.
Maybe we talk more on it.
Yes. Lovely. Well, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here for a moment. So we were talking about experimentation and improvisation. So if you were to just improvise something for us with konakol or solkatu and kanjira, can you give us a small offering?
In improvisation, you can take a pattern and then develop.
Mm-hmm.
That's also part of improvisation. Or there could be small segments that can be improvised within a chorus, within a composition. Okay, maybe I'll just take one pattern and then show the improvisation on that.
Great, thank you.
Takita 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 taka johu takita 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 taka johu takita.
Lovely.
And then in drumming, we use like the what one might call the pulse modulation, changing from 4 to 3. I mainly stay in 4 now, which is very commonly followed. And so this is where, like when I talk about improvisation, there are many things that are common to many traditions. This kind of flow patterns, or sarvalagu patterns, or kekas in North Indian tradition. These are all kind of, some of them are specific to certain cultures.
Yes.
Whereas others are kind of common. This kind of in the 4/4 field, the sarvalagu pattern, and then in jazz, call the steady going patterns, like a brewing.
Yes.
So there are so many varieties, so many kinds. Okay, particularly in the Carnatic tradition, we could be changing the pulses from 4 to 3 or 4 to 5. There's a unique way of presenting them, and this is from my tradition, imbibed from my guru, Suba Sankaran. So I will just play the Chatushra and then to Tishra perhaps, and then Chatushra and then to Kanda.
So that's 4 to 3, 4 to 5.
Yes. Chatushra to Tishra, I ended with a short chord right there.
Yes.
Now, from Chatushra to Kanda.
Beautiful. It's such a wonderful thing to experience that movement from one subdivision to another subdivision, because you do it completely effortlessly. It's for you, it's like breathing. For people, for students who are studying or drummers who are studying, that's something that really has to be learned. but it also has to become absolutely natural, just as you've shown us here.
Mhm. It's true. Yeah, concentrating on the rhythm, on the steady beat, and this kind of laya. This is called the laya jnana. Should
Yes.
should be should be deeply rooted before you learn to do the pulse modulation, changing from one set of pulses to another set of pulses. It has to be tracked right away.
Yes.
That's the thing. So you cannot just take a couple of beats before settling. It has to settle down right away.
Yes.
So that's the most amazing and challenging thing.
Yes, and that's what's so beautiful. You alluded to it earlier in your conversation as well, the fact that your life is rhythm, and there is a deep meditation that goes inside understanding time and investigating time and what that is. You know, we've got all these cycles and time cycles in our lives as well, from the clocks to the seasons to the sun setting and the sun rising, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to hear your personal stories about how the drum has basically become a mantra for your life.
Absolutely, that's the right way to say yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think that that's a huge takeaway from this particular interview. Just as we wrap up here, I think that idea of meditating in time and in rhythm to discover what that really means to you,
Exactly.
and being able to, as you said, understand the cultures that are around you, understand the people who are around you, go into a sense of deep communication, and then you'll really have a meaningful collaboration or a meaningful composition.
It's interesting that you mentioned about the mantras. Interestingly, long time ago, when we look at the Sanskrit meters, and they paved the way for music meters to develop,
Hmm.
because these are all based on mantras. How like a short and long syllables, create some rhythms,
Yes.
and that's how that's the origin of all our Indian rhythms, coming from the Sanskrit meters, and then music meters took their own course.
That's beautiful. Wonderful. Well, we've come to the end of our hour, and so before we sign off with tonight's event, I want to I want to firstly thank my father, Trichy Sankaran, for being the guest of honor here and sharing his insights and his artistry. I want to thank all the people who are watching and sharing this experience with us. It makes it that much more meaningful to know that your energy is out there. And thanks to David Dax and to Crystal Jax and the Music Gallery team for making all of this happen. And I'm just really thrilled that we have a platform here where we can bring the artistry to you in the safety of your homes at this time. So thank you all. Thank you, Dad.
Thank you, Suba, and thank you, David, and all others who were involved in this show. Thank you so much.
All the best, everyone.